Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode, 1950 Hottel Memo Memorandum, 6,751 Lokas and Talas. The concepts of Lokas and Talas represent a fascinating convergence of ancient Eastern metaphysics and modern ufological lore. Within alternative history, esoteric research, and internet lore, they are frequently tied to declassified government files, most notably the document often referred to in UFO circles as the Hottel Memo or Memorandum 6751, archived within the FBI's Freedom of Information Act library, the FBI Vault, via the Guy Hottel collection. The document, officially designated as Memorandum 6751, widely known in UFO lore as the Hottel Memo, originates from the files of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The background of its creation, transmission, and public release involves several key historical details. The memo was typed and filed on March 22, 1950, often mistakenly cited in early lore around July 1947 due to its proximity to the Roswell timeline. It was authored by Guy L. Hottel, who at the time served as the Special Agent in Charge, SAC, of the FBI's Washington field office. True to standard administrative protocol of the era, Hottel addressed the brief single-page memorandum directly to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. The origin of the text within the memo is not an official FBI investigation, but rather an administrative note recording hearsay. According to researchers and historical breakdowns of the file, the story originated as a rumor traced back to Silas Newton, the very same con artist behind the 1948 Aztec, New Mexico doodlebug hoax. Newton's tall tale about crashed saucers and 3-foot-tall beings passed through several intermediaries, including local businessmen and radio advertisers, until it wound up in a local Kansas City publication, the Wyandotte-Echo. An Air Force investigator or an Office of Special Investigations agent picked up the story from these secondary accounts and casually shared it with an FBI special agent in Washington. Hottel then typed it up to document the tip for headquarters, concluding the memo with a note that no further evaluation was attempted by the Bureau. The 1970s FOI release. The memo first surfaced publicly in the late 1970s when researchers, notably Navy physicist and ufologist Bruce Maccabee, successfully requested it under the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. The document remained a niche archival piece until April 2011, when the FBI launched its online FOI electronic reading room, the Vault. Because the memo briefly describes crashed saucers and small humanoids, internet media outlets and conspiracy researchers viralized it as proof of Roswell, causing traffic to the FBI Vault to skyrocket. It quickly became the single most viewed document in the entire online FBI archive. Amidst mounting public speculation, the FBI published formal blog posts and press clarifications emphasizing that the memo is merely an unverified third-hand rumor that the Bureau never investigated, noting it has no direct connection to Roswell or authenticated extraterrestrial events. An exploration of how these concepts bridge ancient cosmological frameworks with modern discussions of non-human intelligence reveals several core themes. The cosmological framework of Lokas and Talas shifts our view of reality away from a purely mechanical clockwork universe floating in a physical void, reframing it instead as a multidimensional multiverse governed by consciousness, hierarchy, and vibrational frequency. Journeying upward through the higher lokas means moving away from the heavy mechanical constraints of gross matter and ascending into refined dimensions of pure awareness, light, and cosmic order, mapped in ancient texts as sophisticated vibrational tiers of the multiverse, rather than mere mythological heavens. These concepts were not reported by a single individual in a historical or journalistic sense. Instead, they form foundational cosmological frameworks, detailed across ancient Indian texts, most notably the Vedas, the Itihasas, such as the Mahabharata, and classical Puranas, such as the Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana, and Shiva Purana. This structural codification of the universe into 14 distinct planes, the 7 ascending lokas and the 7 descending talas, was mapped out by ancient rishis, seers, and scholars through centuries of contemplative tradition and meditative exploration. In the late 19th century, thinkers within the Theosophical Society, such as H.P. Blavatsky, reintroduced and systematized these planes for Western audiences, framing them as interpenetrating dimensions of consciousness and substance. Ultimately, when these ancient terms appear in speculative modern contexts, around early intelligence files, they highlight a compelling bridge between ancient metaphysical cartography and modern attempts to explain anomalous, physics-defying phenomena. As noted, the Sanskrit root lok, meaning to perceive, see, or behold, is foundational. Aloka is fundamentally a field of perception. As consciousness evolves and sheds its densest encumbrances, its capacity to see and experience reality expands exponentially. Therefore, ascending to a higher loka is not merely about changing your physical address. It is an elevation of cognitive bandwidth, where the universe reveals itself in higher dimensions of clarity, harmony, and interconnectedness. In classical Hindu cosmology, the universe spans 14 primary vertical planes, divided evenly into 7 higher worlds, Vyartas Lokas, and 7 lower nether worlds, Talas. Right at the center sits Purloka, our terrestrial plane. It is uniquely significant because it serves as the great crucible, or testing laboratory. Unlike the purely blissful higher realms or the trapped, materially obsessed lower realms, Earth is a mixed domain of duality, karma, and free will. It is the one place where conscious beings possess the distinct capacity to actively choose their evolutionary trajectory, striving upward toward the light or sliding downward into density. Moving upward from Earth, the vibrational frequency of existence scales through successive tiers, each more ethereal and luminous than the last. Bhuvarloka and Svarloka, Indra's heaven's sad face, the immediate transitional planes above Earth, often associated with subtle energetic shifts, astral light, and the realms where refined sensory experiences and celestial order begin to manifest. Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka. As the ascent continues, the realms become increasingly abstract. These are domains inhabited by advanced sages, ascetics, and beings of immense spiritual discipline, tapas, where gross individual ego dissolves into vast oceanic awareness. Satyaloka, the apex, at the very summit of the cosmic tree, sits Satyaloka, the realm of truth, also known as Brahmaloka. It is the highest of the material causal worlds, characterized by absolute truth, unity consciousness, and the direct reflection of the unmanifest absolute. Beings here exist on the very threshold of final liberation, moksha. The entities populating these higher dimensions reflect their environment. These luminous planes are home to devas, cosmic administrators, are radiant forces governing natural and universal laws, and rishis, ancient seers who anchor cosmic wisdom. In the higher lokas, the rigid, heavy cause and effect laws of physical labor and material resistance dissolve. Reality here is largely ideoplastic, meaning form is fluid, and the environment is shaped directly by thought, intention, and harmonic resonance. Ultimately, the higher lokas remind us that within this ancient framework, the universe is fundamentally mental, luminous, and deeply intelligent, an infinite staircase of expanding awareness waiting to be perceived. The descending arc, exploring the lower talas and the cosmic circuit. If the higher lokas represent the progressive refinement of consciousness into pure light, unformless awareness, the talas represent the mirror image descent. The densification of reality into extreme matter, structural rigidity, and material power. Far from being simplistic pits of cartoonish punishment, these subterranean dimensions are mapped in esoteric cosmology as sophisticated realms of hyper-advanced materialism. A deeper exploration of the talas and their interplay with the cosmic whole reveals a striking blueprint of reality. While popular translations often render the talas as literal caves or underground dungeons beneath the physical earth, esoteric and metaphysical commentaries stress that these are subplacing dimensional frequencies. As consciousness steps down through the 7 descending tiers, beginning with Atala and stepping down through Vatala, Natala, and ultimately to Patala, the vibrational frequency of existence throttles down dramatically. This deceleration creates extreme material density and immense psychological gravity. These are domains defined not by natural, radiant spiritual light, but by shadow, deep earth resonance, and glaring, highly sophisticated artificial illumination. The entities populating the talas reflect this obsession with form, structure, and externalized power. These nether realms are traditionally ruled by azurous, titanic, formidable beings perpetually locked in a cosmic tug-of-war with the luminous devas and nagas, serpentine custodians guarding profound earth mysteries, subterranean gateways, and ancient material secrets. Crucially, ancient texts do not depict the Talas as primitive, desolate slums. Instead, they are described as dazzling realms of astonishing material wealth, towering megalithic architecture, glittering subterranean gems, and hyper-advanced physical technologies. They represent the ultimate historical archetype, the pinnacle of outer technological mastery, completely divorced from inner spiritual evolution. It is a civilization built entirely on controlling matter rather than liberating consciousness. When viewed as a unified architecture, the Lokas and Talas form a complete closed cosmic circuit. They fundamentally invert the modern materialist paradigm, positing that consciousness is not a random byproduct of biological matter. Rather, matter is a product of slowed-down consciousness, manifesting across an infinite gradient from blinding, unmanifested light at the apex to hyper-dense, trapped material automation at the base. Right in the absolute center of this vertical multiverse sits human existence on Berloka Earth. Poised delicately as the hinge point between the ascending pull of the higher Lokas and the descending gravitational pull of the lower Talas, human consciousness acts as a living bridge, uniquely equipped with the free will to navigate, anchor, and master both currents. Few documents in the canon of UFO history occupy as peculiar a space as the Hottel Memo, officially FBI Memorandum, dated July 8, 1947. Written right at ground zero of the modern phenomenon in the wake of the Roswell crash, this brief bureaucratic note has become a focal point for researchers attempting to bridge the gap between hard intelligence archives and esoteric metaphysics. A closer look at the context, contents, and subsequent mythological evolution of the Hottel Memo reveals how a piece of secondhand gossip transformed into a cornerstone of alternative ufology. On July 8, 1947, Guy Hottel, then Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Washington field office, typed out a brief memo to Director J. Edgar Hoover. Hottel was not reporting an event he witnessed, nor was he detailing an official FBI investigation. Instead, he was forwarding a wild story passed along by a third-party informant, an investigator for a local Air Force, as the memo notes, to an agent. Historians and skeptics have repeatedly emphasized that the memo is the ultimate textbook example of unverified, third-hand hearsay. It was never an authenticated government acknowledgement of extraterrestrial life. Rather, it was a routine memo documenting a bizarre claim made by an anonymous source who heard it from someone else. Despite its dubious evidentiary standing, alternative researchers and early ufologists immediately latched onto the Hottel Memo because its narrative details mirrored the emerging folklore of crashed saucers with eerie precision. The memo alleged that 3 so-called saucers had been recovered in New Mexico, each occupied by human-like beings of small stature, standing approximately 3 feet tall. It noted that these entities were dressed in a metallic fabric of very fine texture, fitted to their bodies. Most importantly for esoteric researchers, the memo touched upon an idea that would later become a staple of advanced UFO theory. The informant suggested these entities might not be traditional space travelers, flying conventional ships through physical interstellar space, but rather phenomena operating across overlapping dimensions or planes of reality. Over decades of internet lore, parallel cryptoarchaeology, and alternative historical speculation, researchers began drawing a fascinating conceptual bridge. They took the speculative interdimensional undertones found in early intelligence files like the Hottel Memo and mapped them directly onto ancient structural frameworks like the Lokas and Talas. Instead of viewing UFO occupants merely as biological astronauts from a distant exoplanet, this synthesis suggests that encounters with anomalous beings and craft are manifestations of entities shifting through the vibrational gradients of a multidimensional multiverse. In this light, historical documents like the Hottel Memo are reread not as anomalies of the 20th century but as modern, bureaucratic encounters with ancient, non-human realms, suggesting that what the FBI labeled as other planes in 1947 is simply the contemporary terminology for what Vedic and Eastern cosmologies have mapped out for millennia as the layered Lokas and Talas. The conceptual bridge connecting modern UFO phenomena to ancient metaphysical models finds its most robust theoretical home in the interdimensional hypothesis, IDH. Popularized by pioneering researchers like Jacques Vallée, who famously argued that UFOs are not necessarily visiting nuts and bolts spacecraft from distant star systems, but a modern manifestation of a phenomenon as old as humanity, the IDH aligns remarkably well with the multi-dimensional architecture of Lokas and Talas. A deeper look at the synthesis reveals how ancient cosmological maps anticipate modern anomalies. When analyzing the performance characteristics of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, researchers are frequently baffled by behaviors that flagrantly violate the laws of classical Newtonian physics and Einsteinian relativity. UAPs routinely exhibit instantaneous accelerations of thousands of Gs, sharp 90-degree turns at supersonic speeds, transmedium travel, seamlessly moving between space, air, and high-pressure underwater environments, and the capacity to completely dematerialize or cloak. Proponents of the IDH argue that these behaviors are impossible for a traditional physical craft, bound by mass and inertia. However, they make complete sense within a vibrational framework. Just as the Talas and Lokas represent shifting gradients of density, an object or entity operating on a localized, manipulated frequency plane would not be subject to the frictional, mass-based constraints of our gross physical environment per loca. It is moving across dimensional parameters rather than through linear space. In both ancient esoteric texts and modern contactee literature, the core mechanism of interaction is rarely described as a physical voyage across light years of empty void. Traditional Eastern cosmologies maintain that beings populating the higher luminous planes are the hyperdense subterranean tiers do not traverse interstellar space in chemical rockets or atmospheric jets. Their native habitat is vibrational. To manifest within our sensory bandwidth, these entities or their vehicles must allegedly alter their frequency, stepping down a higher subtle energy or stepping up a lower subplacing density to interface with human perception and terrestrial matter. This conceptual model mirrors modern speculative terms found in contactee reports, such as plasma bodies, etheric fields, dimensional membranes, or localized portals. By viewing UAPs through the lens of the interdimensional hypothesis and ancient cosmological mapping, the phenomenon transforms from a baffling technological puzzle of the 20th century into a timeless, recurring facet of a multi-tiered reality, suggesting that what we call unidentified today is simply the ancient unknown wearing a modern scientific mask. The convergence of ancient Eastern cosmologies, such as the multi-dimensional architecture of Lokas and Talas, with modern ufology represents far more than a quirky cross-pollination of ideas. It signals a profound philosophical evolution in how humanity conceptualizes reality, intelligence, and the unknown. A closer look at the synthesis reveals two major paradigm shifts, reshaping the discourse on anomalous phenomena. For decades, mainstream and alternative ufology remained largely trapped in a materialistic paradigm. The conversation was dominated by nuts and bolts mechanics, exotic propulsion systems, chemical fuels, aerodynamic profiles, metal alloys, and secret government river engineering programs. Incorporating cosmological frameworks fundamentally inverts this approach. It suggests that physical craft and anomalous bodies are merely downstream manifestations of a deeper, non-physical reality. Within this view, consciousness, intent, and vibrational frequency are not passive observers, but active prerequisites for interacting with non-human intelligence. To encounter the phenomenon is less about being in the right physical coordinates and more about operating on the correct cognitive or spiritual bandwidth. A common modern bias is to view ancient mythologies as primitive superstitions, fanciful stories invented by pre-scientific cultures to explain natural phenomena. However, the integration of ancient models with modern anomaly research suggests an entirely different conclusion. Ancient sages were cartographers of inner space. Proponents of this ancient future synthesis argue that rishis and contemplatives mapped out complex multidimensional geographies, not through telescopes or particle colliders, but through deep, systematic meditative states and altered awareness. Strikingly, these ancient maps of nested vibrational dimensions mirror the cutting-edge abstractions of modern theoretical physics, such as multi-dimensional brains and string theory, quantum entanglement, and the holographic universe model. humanity is finding that ancient spiritual frameworks and modern quantum mechanics are ultimately describing the exact same underlying reality using different vocabularies. What specific aspect of this intersection between ancient Vedic geography and modern anomaly research would you like to explore next? The detailed points extracted from Memorandum 6751, the Hottel Memo, offer a fascinating look into how early UFO lore intertwined with esoteric philosophy. When analyzed closely, these claims read less like a standard military intelligence briefing and more like a dispatch from a metaphysical text foreshadowing decades of modern interdimensional and high strangeness theories. A deep dive into these key points and their broader implications reveals a remarkable conceptual lineage. The memo asserts that the craft and their occupants do not originate from a physical planet in the conventional astronomical sense. Instead, they hail from an etheric planet that interpenetrates our physical Earth, remaining entirely invisible to normal human sensory perception. This concept maps directly onto the Eastern cosmological framework of Lokas and Talas. In those traditions, subtle, higher, or lower planes are not light years away across empty space. They exist right here, coextensive and overlaying our physical plane, Berloka. They are hidden from ordinary view simply because they vibrate at a different frequency band than our gross biological senses can register. These entities and their vehicles reportedly transition into our reality by adjusting their vibrational frequency to match the dense matter of our physical world. This mirrors the occult and esoteric doctrine of densification. Just as a radio receiver tunes into a specific frequency to catch an invisible broadcast, these phenomena allegedly manipulate wave states or energy densities to step down from a subtle, non-physical realm into gross corporeal visibility. It explains why UFOs so frequently appear and disappear in midair. They aren't leaving the airspace, they are shifting frequency bands. The memo notes that the disks possessed a form of radiant energy or a directional ray, capable of neutralizing or disintegrating any attacking craft. Early UFO lore frequently attributed death ray or directed energy capabilities to anomalous craft, such as the famous 1952 Washington, D.C. radar visual sightings or various contactee claims. In the context of the Talas, the subterranean realms associated with hyper-advanced material technology, this depicts an intelligence that commands forces far beyond kinetic propulsion, utilizing electromagnetic or zero-point field manipulation as a defensive shield. The source behind the memo insisted that the visitors' mission was fundamentally peaceful and that they were actively contemplating settling or establishing a presence on this plane. The idea of non-human or elder intelligences coexisting alongside humanity in hidden enclaves is a universal mythos. In Vedic lore, beings from the nether Talas or higher realms frequently interact with, observe, or establish domains that overlap with terrestrial human societies. While initial popular retellings of the Hottel Memo usually focus on 3-foot-tall beings, alternative or expanded interpretations of the source material sometimes reference entities of varying scales, reflecting the vast morphological diversity found in ancient folklore. Whether depicted as tiny humanoids or towering celestial figures, the consistent thread is anthropomorphic resonance. Non-human intelligences are rarely described as formless blobs. They consistently appear in structured bipedal, human-like forms, suggesting to esoteric researchers that the human template is a fundamental architectural blueprint across multiple dimensions of consciousness. Reevaluating Memorandum 6751 through the lens of Lokas, Talas, and the interdimensional hypothesis changes how we view the document's historical weight. While mainstream historians dismiss it as an unverified artifact of 1947 panic, alternative researchers view it as an early, unfiltered glimpse into the high strangeness paradigm. It suggests that the UFO phenomenon is not a recent mechanical intrusion by distant space travelers, but an ongoing interface with a multi-tiered, vibrational reality that has been mapped by human consciousness for thousands of years. The detailed mapping of the 14 primary planes, the 7 higher Lokas, and the 7 lower Talas, provides the ultimate structural blueprint for understanding how ancient cosmological traditions intersect with speculative modern ufology. When placed side by side with documents like the FBI's Memorandum 6751, These traditional frameworks offer a compelling alternative to the standard nuts and bolts space traveler narrative. To understand the Eastern cosmological map is to view the universe not as a vast, empty expanse of dead rock and cold vacuum, but as a living, graduated hierarchy of awareness. The 7 higher lokas represent the upward trajectory of existence, where matter becomes increasingly refined, constraints fall away, and consciousness expands toward its ultimate source. A closer examination of each ascending tier reveals how ancient traditions charted the architecture of the spirit. 1. Bhu Loka, the gross physical realm. Bhu Loka is our familiar physical earth, the gross material plane of solid matter, biological forms, and sensory experience. Unlike the purely blissful planes above it, Earth is uniquely defined by duality, friction, and karma. It is considered the ultimate testing ground and spiritual gymnasium. Here, caught between light and dark, pleasure and pain, conscious beings possess the rare and powerful gift of free will, making it the primary theater where spiritual evolution or regression actually takes place. 2. Bhuverloka, the atmospheric and astral buffer. Situated directly above the physical Earth, Bhuverloka serves as the subtle atmospheric and energetic boundary layer, akin to the astral plane in Western esotericism. This realm is populated by semi-divine entities, subtle elemental forces, discarnate human souls lingering near the earthly vibration, and various nature spirits. It is the immediate unseen background hum of our physical reality, acting as a bridge where earthly desires and subtle energies first begin to take form. 3. Swarloka, the celestial realm of Indra. The abode of radiance, often referred to in classical texts as Svarga or Indra's heaven, Swarloka is the brilliant plane of celestial bodies, dazzling light, and divine administration. The nature of experience, this is the realm traditionally associated with the devas, the cosmic managers, and radiant administrators of natural laws. Existence here is characterized by exquisite beauty, harmony, and profound sensory delight, though it is still technically bound within the material causal cycle. Meaning souls here eventually return to Earth to continue their evolution, once their accumulated merit is balanced. 4. Maharloka, the sanctuary of great sages. The realm of wisdom, crossing the threshold of Maharloka. The nature of existence shifts dramatically away from sensory indulgence and toward deep contemplation. The inhabitants, this is the sanctuary of the Maharishis, great seers, highly evolved ascetics, and cosmic teachers. Beings who reside here have transcended ordinary human ego and emotional turbulence, dedicating their existence to holding the structural templates of cosmic wisdom and aiding the spiritual evolution of lower worlds. 5. Janaloka, the causal realm of creation. The womb of forms, Janaloka is a high causal plane associated with the progenitors of humanity, Prajapatis, and the foundational archetypes of creation. The mechanics of mind. In this sublime dimension, individual consciousness begins to merge into collective creative currents. Thought here is immediately generative. Realities are spun directly from causal intent before filtering down into the subtle and gross planes below. 6. Tapaloka, the dimension of ascetic fire. The realm of supreme tapas, derived from the Sanskrit root tap, to burn or heat. Tapaloka is the dimension of intense spiritual austerity, radiant energetic discipline, and inner fire, tapas. The state of being, inhabited by beings of staggering spiritual power and purity. This realm operates entirely on refined, self-illuminating energy. The gross limitations of form are nearly dissolved here, replaced by absolute mastery over the energetic fabric of reality. 7. Satyaloka Brahmaloka, the apex of truth. The ultimate summit. At the very top of the material causal multiverse sits Satyaloka, the realm of truth, or Brahmaloka, the final threshold. This is the absolute apex of manifested existence, characterized by unshakable truth, unity consciousness, and complete non-duality. Beings who reach this plane exist on the razor's edge of final liberation, moksha, where individual identity dissolves back into the infinite ocean of pure, unmanifested consciousness. The descending axis, a deep dive into the 7 lower talas. While the ascending lokas trace the progressive refinement of consciousness into pure spiritual light, the descending talas map the exact opposite trajectory. the systematic densification of reality into extreme matter, structural rigidity, and material power. Far from being simplistic pits of cartoonish damnation, these 7 subterranean dimensions are detailed in esoteric traditions as sophisticated, hypermaterial realms. A closer look at each tier of this descending architecture reveals a fascinating blueprint of material entrapment and technological mastery. 1. Atala, the realm of primal shadows and unchecked desire. The upper threshold. As the immediate first step downward from the physical earth, Loka, Atala represents the gateway to the nether regions. The nature of experience, governed by subterranean forces, this plane is heavily associated with unbridled material passions, raw physical impulses, and the genesis of shadow. It is a domain where psychological density begins to coarsen, pulling awareness away from subtle reflection and locking it into immediate sensory fixation. 2. Vatala, the realm of raw elemental currents. The subterranean current, descending further, Vatala is characterized by intense, turbulent underground energies and raw elemental volatility. The mechanics. This realm is traditionally linked to fierce tectonic and fluid forces, the deep churning subterranean rivers and magnetic pressure points that underpin the physical crust. It represents a state where consciousness is buffeted by raw, uncontrolled natural forces. 3. Sudala, the realm of vast subterranean wealth. The Titanic domain, Sudala, is famously associated in ancient lore with King Bali, a legendary and powerful Titanic figure, Azura, noted for his righteousness yet deeply anchored in material sovereignty. Awe-inspiring opulence. Unlike the chaotic lower tiers, Sudala is described as a realm of astonishing material magnificence. It features vast subterranean cities, glittering golden architecture, and immense stores of material wealth, symbolizing the height of earthly and physical abundance divorced from spiritual liberation. 4. Talatala, the realm of advanced mechanics and technology. The technocratic hub. Talatala is perhaps the most striking of the Mid-Talas from a modern speculative perspective, traditionally viewed as a realm where complex material mechanics, architecture, and structural engineering reign supreme. The state of being. This is a dimension defined by systematic control over physical law. It represents pure functionalism, an environment governed by advanced operational systems, automated structures, and an obsessive mastery of physical engineering without any corresponding inner spiritual growth. 5. Mahatala, the realm of serpentine keepers and deep earth secrets. The serpent's lair, Mahatala, is inhabited by powerful ancient entities, often personified as Nagas, who possess profound, hidden knowledge of the earth's deepest strata. The keeper of secrets. Beings in this realm are deeply entrenched in the material history of the planet. They guard ancient geological secrets, subterranean networks, and primal magnetic currents, operating with a cold, sharp, hyper-focused intellect rooted entirely in material reality. 6. Rasatala, the reservoir of dense physical power. The deep foundations. Rasatala represents the ancient foundational storage strata of the nether multiverse, vast reservoirs of dense physical energy and primordial matter. The environment. The inhabitants here are characterized by immense physical strength and a calcified attachment to material form. It is a heavy, silent realm where the energetic pressure of matter begins to approach its absolute limit. 7. Padala Nagaloka, the ultimate anchor of density. The absolute nadir. At the very bottom of the cosmological scale sits Padala, frequently associated with Nagaloka, the subterranean city of the Serpent Kings. It is the 7th and deepest underworld. The maximum compression. Padala is the nethermost anchor of physical density, extreme pressure, and total material containment. It represents the absolute maximum deceleration of vibrational frequency, a world blazing with artificial gems and hyper-advanced subterranean technology, yet completely sealed off from the natural light of the higher realms. The conceptual bridge connecting these ancient subterranean and celestial geographies to modern intelligence archives, such as the interdimensional interpretations of Memorandum 6751, was largely forged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries through theosophical teachings. When thinkers like H.P. Blavatsky and subsequent esoteric researchers systematized Eastern cosmologies for Western audiences, they explicitly framed the Lokas and Talas not as distant mythological heavens or cartoonish underworlds, but as interpenetrating, multidimensional planes of substance and consciousness. This historical cross-pollination explains why mid-century intelligence informants, alternative researchers, and contactees struggling to describe the physics-defying behavior of UFOs instinctively reached for a vocabulary of etheric planets, subplacing dimensions, and frequency manipulation. What modern ufology often treats as a novel 20th century mystery is, in reality, a modern bureaucratic encounter with a multi-tiered cosmic architecture that human consciousness has mapped for millennia. By viewing unidentified anomalous phenomena through this 14-tiered cosmological lens, the entire conversation shifts. UFOs cease to be merely chemical rockets, crossing a physical void from Mars or Zeta Reticuli. Instead, they are refactored as transient British phenomena, vehicles, and entities, shifting their vibrational frequency between the nested Lokas and Talas that coexist right here, unseen within the multi-dimensional fabric of our shared reality. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archive Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.